the organizer of this conference for inviting me to this wonderful conference. And today I am sharing my keynote session on the framework for motivation towards the integration of Education 4.0, capacity building for engineering and science faculty. So this is the agenda or the main topic which I am going to share with you. It's about a concept paper as well, that we are developing a framework for motivation towards the integration of Education 4.0 in our country, in Pakistan. So if we are talking about Education 4.0, so it's actually retrieved from Industrial Revolution 4.0. So in this context, the innovation and digital shift, as we all know that right now, currently we are in the era of Education 4.0 or Industrial Revolution 4.0, in which we are moving towards the cyber physical systems and working with the integration of new digital technologies and embed them and blend them within education and curriculum. So there are also several things which need to be in consideration, like IoTs associated with Industrial Revolution 4.0, cloud computing, storage, and then CPS, AI. So moreover, it has replaced everywhere, like in manufacturing section, in industry, also if, in education. So the concept of Education 4.0, because sometimes it's a bit confusing for most of us if we talk about education sector or for our teachers point of view. So Education 4.0 is the one which is retrieved from IR 4.0, and we are developing the capacities and competencies among teachers and faculty members. If we can say that it's directly or indirectly related with science and engineering, but we can also have to work on the other part, which is related to the social sciences for teachers capacity development, because nowadays if we focus for this pandemic situation, COVID-19, where like teachers have to now develop their competencies towards integration of ICT. They must have to be develop their competency and familiar to ICT, especially those teachers as well. They were teaching social sciences subjects. So now I think the things are much aligned, and most of our teachers around the world globally, those they were not familiar with those skills. So now they get all the skills, training, and the things are much better than before. So the agenda of this Education 4.0 is that we have to train and we have to develop our workforce, especially in the education sectors, in teachers part, or the teachers you can say the domain. We need to develop their competency and upskill their as per the 21st century skill. We need to provide them all such expertise which are required in our next upcoming days in our curriculums of Education 4.0, in which we have to talk about robotics, we have to work for IoTs, we have to work for integration of AI in education. So these things need to be considered in that. So that was about the Education 4.0. So the current industrial revolution, which brings like in all over the world in ICTs and changing the impact, not just for us, it's also for our like a global, if we talk about a global perspective. So it's also affect our daily lives, not just for the education part, it's also in our daily life, because if we're talking about Education 4.0, so similarly we have upcoming Society 5.0. So the things are going to be shift in future and much more developed. So the utilization of information and communication technology in education, incorporate technologies to curriculum, because it will help us to achieve those goals which we need to provide to our future learners. So if we're talking about quality education, so we must need to upgrade ourselves as an educator to embrace all the competencies which are required by the 21st century educator. So in order to meet those requirements which are moving towards the technology-based economy, knowledge-based economy, or technology-based economy due to this IR 4.0, so we need to come up with a new framework of Education 4.0, in which we have to re-engineering our curriculum, in which we have to rethink about that why and how we can integrate this part of new philosophy concept in our syllabus starts from secondary school till college and higher education. So these are the major issues which we need to be focused for. So based on the technological tools and devices, because as educators, we know that it is helping us and facilitating us to develop our competencies and skills in terms of meeting the upcoming challenges as educators in future. Because now we have to know that previously we were not focusing more towards we can say that technology integration in education, but now there's so much work which has been done in this domain. So we are focusing for the content knowledge, like we have a TPEC model, talking about technological, pedagogical content knowledge. So similarly, we have EDDI, Assure, so need to revise them as per the agenda of digital Bloom's taxonomy. So we can achieve it with a fruitful way and integrate as per our own need. So this is a problem which we have highlighted, and in the base of that, I think it's much more similar with all such countries. They are in this domain. Like we in our country, we are living in currently, because we're talking about such new pedagogical approaches, new technological approaches, but we are a bit far from the one which is currently existing. So if I compare the education 4.0 in the current scenario, so we are in the second industrial revolution. So we have still need to struggle to achieve that. So like in Pakistan, if I talk about Pakistan, so those areas it's must be addressed if we are moving towards the technological era or technological shift in this domain. And we need to develop our competencies accordingly. So in the context of knowledge based learning, we can also set that the less use of technology in classroom, because the teachers are sometimes not comfortable with that, because they are the one, they are going to implement it in the classroom. So first we need to develop the competencies of teacher educators, and then we can move towards, because they are the one, they will intervene those competencies in students. So this is one of the challenging part which we need to focus for, and that's why we are motivating our teachers. And this framework is also related towards that, how we can motivate our teachers to develop such competencies, and later on they can intervene that to the students. So this is one of the challenge, but at least we have to propose some specific framework. Therefore, there is a sheer need of inclusive framework for assessing the motivation level of educators to integrate this concept of education 4.0 in curriculum and their teaching and learning activities in their pedagogies and andragogies. So I think I already talked about this, that how this education 4.0 and IR 4.0 is integrated in terms of the syllabus and curriculum in education settings. So this is a bit in the context of Pakistan. So in our in our country, we are now considering much more to develop the individual competencies in terms of teachers to enhance their skills, their 4Cs like communication, critical thinking, creativity, and also their decision making skills, their reasoning skills among students and teachers both. So but we need to first train our teachers so they can have they can effectively deliver to their respective schools and educational institutions. So the modern technologies these days, because this is, we cannot neglect that currently we are in this the era of technological integration, moving towards online classroom, moving towards flipped classroom, digitalization in education, gamification in education, and so many things. They are currently in our context. So for to effective conversation between educator and students, we must need to facilitate or take technology as a medium. Even we are talking about PCK, like we are talking about PCK or TPC, TPAC. So we need to develop such competencies so we can align and integrate all of them. So these are the issues. So we have hypothesized, like construct a hypothesis that we are going to do, or like based on our framework, we are assessing the motivation level, which is like based on our developed framework, that towards the education 4.0 among engineering and science students, because as I told you that it's directly related with them. Also other fields are also relate with that, but specifically in the education sector, if we talk about IR 4.0, so it's much more related with engineering and science disciplines. So we are targeting community colleges in our area, in IB community colleges. So that will help us. There are 13 community colleges in which we are targeting, because we have all the infrastructure which we are providing to them. So we can assess them effectively. So this is the hypothesis. This is a conceptual framework on which we are currently like focusing for. Like we are focusing for three major factors, like the human factor, like intrinsic value of that, and then influencing factor. And then later on, we are dividing them, like for human factors, we are more, because there will be sub factors as well. But the major factors are the educator's self-efficacy towards education 4.0. And then later on, we are moving towards our intrinsic value, in which we are focusing for the integration part, which is one of the major part and challenging part, in which we are focusing to integrate education 4.0 in the framework. And then the use or acceptance or adaptation or frequently adaptation of ICT in education 4.0. So these are the major three elements in which we are targeting in our framework, which we are going to propose in this research. So the main theory, which is directly linked with this, because talking about motivation, so the self-efficacy theory, in which we are working to align our objectives, our factors, which we are going to find out in our research. And already we have some preliminary findings in which we are targeting to align them with the development of self-efficacy towards education 4.0, and then we can assess the behavior and performance of educators after the integration or adaptation of this approach. So this is the theory which we are currently focusing for. Then there is another thing that is one of the very important part, that's the acceptance, technology acceptance model. Because if we are talking about TPAC and other models which are related with the integration of pedagogy and content knowledge and align them as per our need. So here we are focusing towards the acceptance model of technology, in which we have our usefulness is one of the very important part. Then also the ease of use of technology within classroom or for pedagogy, for delivery, and then attitude towards the usability and ease of this particular technology, which we are integrating in our, you can say, the teaching and learning process. Then the behavioral intention to use this is one of the most of the challenge. It's also aligned with our proposed framework, because this technology acceptance model is supporting our developed framework, because we need a reference point that how we can further intervene through this framework within the classroom. So this is one of the challenging part, but we have tried to manage our this resource based on our capacities and expertise of our group members. So the literature review, which are more relevant, it's about I have targeted and distributed in 3 and 4 parts. Like we are talking about the is, for example, main factors that are affecting the motivation of teachers to use ICT, human factor, intrinsic motivation. So according to a researcher, Scales in 2015, he also indicated this, that these are the factors which we need to focus for. And specifically because on that time education 4.0 was not in that much in the context, but currently we need to develop such competencies and help, because ICT is directly indirectly related with education 4.0, and it's the base of that particular phenomena of industrial revolution. So the human factor is one of the most challenging, because if we talk about in the industrial settings, in education settings, because we are dealing with humans, teachers are dealing with humans, educators are engineering the minds or the behaviors or developing their competencies and working on the cognitive part of the students. So it's more towards the engineering of mind. So we are dealing with humans. So I think human factor is one of the challenging part, because if the teacher is not motivated, teacher is not that much like skilled, so how he or she can deliver to the students. So we need to develop from them, and then they can integrate in their outlines, in their curriculum syllabus, so the things, then it can be moved further. So similarly, the values of intrinsic, because it's also satisfaction of educators and based on their interest. Because if because I also had observed during my experience and working experience in different countries. So I have observed there are some faculty members, students also, and also teachers, they have ICT phobia. So firstly, we need to provide our students a comfortable environment in where they can effectively, you can say, embrace or accept the reality of ICT and provide them in a very comfortable way. We have to teach them, train them in a very comfortable way, easiest way. So the phobia can be minimized or mitigate in such way by using such strategies. Then the influencing factor, because we are focusing for usability of ICT tools, the level of interactivity within the particular gadget, the particular tool, and then the adaptability. And the last thing that what I have also observed, and several researchers also supported this, that gamification is one of the interesting approach, because teaching through games is nowadays, it's through virtual reality, augmented reality. We are talking about gamification. I think it's one of the most easiest way to teach some specific content to anyone, like even he is not expert on that. So I think technologists in education is, they can work together, they can develop such games, because we need support of technologists if we want to develop such applications or tools. So align them with our objectives, learning outcomes, CLOs, PLOs, and then we can come up with some effective games. So that is one of the way literature also supported. So the methodology which we have adopted, it's a mixed method approach in which we are focusing towards the sequential exploratory research design. So explanatory research design means we are moving towards, from quantity, we are moving towards quali. So in the initial part, we come out with the existing knowledge, information, and then based on survey instrument, and then we move further towards the qualitative, and then compare and contrast our findings. So this is the if we talk about the research paradigm, so it's about the pragmatism. The philosophy of pragmatism is integrated in this research methodology. So as we know that the pragmatists, they believe that we can test or assess the things, but two different ways, and then we conclude something and construct some new knowledge. So that's one of the way which we have like the methodology, method or approach we have integrated in this framework. Okay, so the data collection tool, as it's a mixed method research, so two different tools. Like for example, we are using for quantitative part, we're using survey, and we are using a questionnaire. And for our qualitative part, we are also doing some observations, but the major part is towards the structured interview, semi-structured interviews, because semi-structured interviews will help us to further explore in depth and to come up with the concrete information and detailed information. So for the data analysis, because it's a quanti and quali, so we are using SPSS for data analysis, in which we are focusing for like independent sample t-test, or we are also planning, or we also had this, because based on our themes, we can use towards the thematic analysis for our qualitative part. So it will help us to come up with main and sub themes, and these themes can be further integrated in our framework to provide authentic information or the solid information. The sampling is from IB community colleges in Pakistan, in the province of Sindh, because Pakistan also have one of the province Sindh. So in Sindh, we are targeting the community colleges. In IB is Sakhar, the university from which I'm also affiliated. So we are also having dealing with organizing some community colleges, managing community colleges. So we are targeting them. So 68 educators will be randomly selected for our quantitative research-based teachers. Because we're talking about teachers, especially for those they are in science and engineering disciplines. So then 10 educators from like science and engineering domains will be respondent for our qualitative part. So the last but not least, the expected outcomes. The outcome of this proposed research that we will help to indicate the level of motivation among educators towards the integration of education 4.0 by using this framework for motivation, but through integration of education 4.0. So this framework can also be implemented to other contexts, also in other countries. Globally, we can use it based on the similar context, like for example, in Bangladesh, India, in the other countries which have similar issues, or some other localities. So we can have use such, even in Indonesia, we can use it. So it will be used as a potential reference study in the context of Pakistan for developing a next framework, because we are this is in somehow we can say that this is an initial stage of art, and later on we can further come up with the next level of that. We can move towards, from colleges towards universities to higher education institutions, and we can do it for provisional wise, like for example for SEN, then we can move towards other provinces of the country. So the study will support the knowledge economy policy of our country and the government of Pakistan in the vision and mission of the knowledge economy. So these are three expected outcomes which we are currently come up with these outcomes that supposedly this framework can help. Is that so? Because it's in the as I told you that it's in the preliminary results we already get. So we cannot conclude until or unless we have all those information which can provide us a complete picture, a clear picture of this the outcome. So these are the expected outcome. That's why. So thank you very much, Terima kasih, and now over to the moderator. Thank you.